4. Theater.
Are any of you guys members of a fraternity or a sorority organization? Quite a few of you? Good. Luann, what is the traditional party during homecoming?
You mean like the kind of party? The toga party, I guess. We all get dressed up in bed sheets.
Right, the toga, the traditional dress of ancient Rome. That's what we're going to talk about today. Since we're studying Julius Caesar, that would of course be the type of costume we need to design for the actors. So if we want to create authentic costumes, we have to know something about the history of this type of clothing. Now, in the beginning, the toga was a large woolen blanket. The ancient Romans would wrap it around their body for clothing.
Wasn't it just the upper class that wore the toga?
At first, no. What you may be thinking of is the law that non-citizens were not permitted to wear togas. It was actually forbidden for foreigners to wear togas. But pretty much all Romans wore the toga ubiquitously for all kinds of different occasions. That didn't last too long though, because as you can imagine, or Luann, as you probably know, the toga is a little awkward. It's okay to party in a bedsheet, but try farming or going to war in one. So, for activities that involved a lot of movement, the toga fell out of fashion in favor of more practical garb. Instead, the use of the toga in Rome became more and more restricted to formal occasions. That's good news for us, because the characters in Julius Caesar interact in mostly formal settings. Now, let me just tell you a bit about the actual toga itself. Historians believe togas were made from 5.5-meter semicircles of cloth. The cloth was cut into a big half circle, not a rectangle like bed sheets. This cloth was, of course, wrapped around the body, and a sash was worn over the left shoulder and under the right arm. To keep the thing from falling off, and we certainly don't want the togas on our actors to slip off during a show, the toga was pinned up with pins. These were called fivulate, in case you're interested. I have some pictures of authentic Roman fivulate on display in museums, so we can try to copy some of those designs for our costumes. Another option we have is to make a belt for some characters. Some Romans wore their togas with belts. Now, when we think of togas, we picture everyone wearing pretty much identical outfits, right? Basically, white bed sheets for all. Not quite. There were actually many kinds. For example, the toga virilis, or men's toga, was worn by adult male citizens. Women, on the other hand, had their own version of the toga called the scola. Toga polla, or black togas, had two functions. People of the lower classes wore them regularly, and people of the upper class would wear them after the death of a loved one to show that they were in mourning. That's important for us. We'll have to costume the slaves in our show in black togas. There was also a special kind of toga which featured a purple stripe and was worn by high-ranking officials and upper-class boys, or the painted toga, which was very ornate and worn on festive occasions by upper-class officials. Did anyone actually wear plain white togas? Actually, yes. The pure white toga candida was worn by senatorial candidates. Guess what? That is actually what most of our actors will need. We'll take a look at the character list for our cast a little later, but for the most part, it looks like our costuming will be pretty easy. We'll need mostly plain white togas that are just big half circles of cloth. That just means cutting and hemming. We'll also need to decide which characters to assign pins and sashes and which ones will get belts. Actually, the hardest job for the costumer in this show may be teaching all of the actors how to correctly put on their togas. We haven't talked about footwear yet. Of course, our senators in this show aren't going to be running around the stage barefoot. So let's take a look at how authentic Roman sandals looked.
Number 1. What is the topic of the lecture? Number 2. What is a key point in the talk? Number 3. According to the professor, what will the customer need to make? Number 4. Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
That didn't last too long, though, because as you can imagine, or Luann, as you probably know, the toga is a little awkward. It's okay to party in a bedsheet, but try farming or going to war in one.
What does the speaker mean when he says this?
It's okay to party in a bedsheet, but try farming or going to war in one.